Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about getting things done. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how do software engineers develop a getting things done attitude, and how can you cultivate that within a team? Well, so first and foremost, it's down to, in my experience, two things that makes a person get like a let's just get this thing done type of attitude. And the first and foremost thing is that they need confidence in their, well, I don't want to say skills per se, because it's not necessarily a skills thing. It's more a question of confidence in a foreseeable execution. In other words, they need a confidence in that they will be able to manage the situation or be able to do this thing, or even if they don't know exactly how this thing is going to turn out, they need to know that they know where to start. Like, they're excited to get into the problem, and that can be, usually there's a range to it, but I find that the people who have that sort of confidence within themselves either know what to do, or they feel confident in that they're going to solve it because they have skills that sort of like, it's what is it they say, nothing new under the sun. It's just another way they have already existing skills, basically. So that's the one part. The other part is that they need to feel as if the problem that they're going to solve is something that they can take direct action on. Like, it's something that is within their sphere of influence to get working on. And although I think that this is sad in a way, because I think that that is truly one of the things that I've observed in a lot of software developers, which is, as I said, a little bit sad. And that is that if it's not a question of them basically sitting down and coding the solution themselves, or like just sort of getting their hands dirty, they may or may not have this attitude. And that's kind of funny, because in many cases there's a question of, well, you might not be able to do this all on your own. You might have to synchronize with some people. Might have to have a few conversations, book a few meetings, etc., etc. And that can-do attitude, let's just get this thing done type of thing, is, well, it's almost funny, because in a sense that is the sort of attitude when it comes to meetings and stuff like that. That's what a good product owner, or like a person who doesn't code for a living, that's the sort of thing that they will do. Which I think is a little bit funny, because if the developers I really wish we could get to that point where people were, well, more concerned with figuring things out, as opposed to, how are you going to figure that out? Because it's basically, if it's not coding, then I don't really feel like doing it, or I don't really like having a bunch of meetings, etc., etc. And I kind of go, yeah, but then you're sort of limiting all your like possible projects and all the things that you could get done to something that you can code yourself without having to talk to a bunch of other people, etc., etc. But anywho, I digress. These are the two main things. So you need confidence in execution, and you need the ability to, well, basically get started and see this thing through to the end, more or less. And the way that you cultivate this attitude within teams is usually fairly straightforward, in my opinion, at the very least. For a manager, it might be more tricky, because it's not something that you can really affect all that much. But what you basically need to do is to provide inspiration to the team. And the reason why I claim that a manager won't be able to really do this is because the things that inspire software developers are not something that you're most likely going to understand. I know that that sounds weird, or maybe a little bit harsh, but the reality is that IT managers, they don't really understand what makes software developers tick, in my experience. Like, they understand how to set up in the good ones, they know how to set up a work structure, they know how to talk to people, they know how to like manage and so forth, absolutely. But when it comes to inspiration and getting people hungry and things like that, it is a lot more difficult and nuanced than what the average manager is able to do, because what I argue gets the software developers who have this can-do attitude going is, all right, do we have projects or improvements or little tidbits within the code that we can make something really awesome from? Now, I'm not talking about building something big and monstrosity type of thing, like with something very advanced. I'm saying I've always seen that the thing that gets the developers going is when they sit and talk a little bit about something in the code. And this is why I promote that you have weekly sync up where you sort of talk shop with the software developers. Like the developers should at least once a day, well, let's say once a week at the very least, just talk about what they're working on, what things that they think like, just air the thoughts, just have a casual conversation. Because usually what happens is that people start talking about different modules within the code or things that they could improve or projects they have and so forth, and then someone comes with an idea and they go, wow, it would be really cool if we could do A, B, and C, and then someone, and that sort of, it starts a session of inspirations and inspiration, and it gets people going about fixing something as silly as rewriting a small module with a nicer interface that could make it easier to do A, B, and C. The reason why these sorts of improvements, those things where you sort of just like you're feeding off each other's energy, why these are so important is because this brings back passion into the workflow. It brings in creativity and problem solving that feels stimulating to the software developer. It's not something that they're, quote unquote, forced to do. It's not just another story. It's something that they came up with themselves, and it's going to make things, quote unquote, better. It gives them positive energy, if that makes sense. And if you have a culture within your team of doing these sorts of things, where you have a tech lead or someone who is a bit of an inspiration type of person, where I'm not saying that these people are like thought leaders or anything like that. I'm saying that these are the sorts of people who will, they're actually very good at figuring out that, oh yeah, we have all this legacy code here. Yeah, okay, I rewrote it like a little bit and changed a few things around, and then people are really happy about the results. People, it's the equivalent of having that coworker who every once in a while comes in with, we have a term we call fika in Sweden, which basically means here is a few pastries and some coffee and like something like that, and let's just sit for a few minutes and enjoy some little snack together and talk. It's something that lifts the mood of everybody there. If you buy like a small like pie or bring pie or cake or something like that for your coworkers, or for the stereotypical people out there, donuts in North America or whatever you might be. I'm not going to say anything about that. You bring something and show your coworkers that, hey, this is not just another day. This is a day where this person brought something tasty to the office. It's a similar sort of thing to that, but it's even more powerful because it's actually a way where you get creative with improving your own work process. And I have never met a human being who is not, and I really believe that is one of the most positive human traits there is. People on average, when they get into the right mindset, really want to improve themselves and the way they do work. They want to feel able to identify problems and then solving those problems. Even if they're small problems, even if it's the tiny thing that I see every single person I've ever seen who has that moment where they figure something out. It can be anything. It's really anything. It doesn't have to be software related whatsoever. You see the sparkle in their eyes when their creativity starts flourishing, right? And if you have that sort of environment in your team, that can-do attitude comes very, very organically, very, very quickly. The only thing that can really kill it, if you have these things in place, is if you have a very negative management style, where you might just, this is another improvement that we could make, but you never actually give the developers any slack time or anything like that to actually go and fix something, or so forth and so forth. If that's the case, then it's unlikely that things will change, or like they're gonna they're not gonna get that attitude. To me, it's sort of important to have these sorts of smaller improvement stories and things that the developers want to like just play around with every once in a while, because it's like giving them a breather in a marathon or something like that. It's the thing that's going to make them work, feel energized about that thing, and then that's going to spill over into other work as well, as far as I've ever seen, at the very least. So what I want you to take away from this is that the way that software engineers develop a get things done attitude is that they first and foremost feel like they're confident in that they know how to execute on whatever it is that they do. In other words, either they should have the skills necessary, and they should feel like they understand how to, like, where are they heading with this thing, how are they going to finish this thing. And then the other thing is very simple: they need to be able to do it. They need to feel as if they can sit down and start, like, roll their sleeves up, and then it's going to be okay to do that. These two things together is the thing that develop that, and to get that rolling in a team is usually very simple. You need at the minimum, and this is something that they managers, you can actually do this if this is not happening in your teams. Have a 1 hour meeting once a week. If it's better if that's more than that, but like usually at once a week at the very least, where I even do it very informally with my guys. I basically sit down and I say, okay, there's a meeting every Monday. You don't have to, like, there's no, like, if there's nothing to talk about, there's nothing to talk about. And I've never so far had that meeting be useless, even if we just sit down and I basically go around the table and say, I'm working on this. It's that simple. You basically just talk about what you're working on, and if anybody has any thoughts they would want to share about the code, and then you take the conversation like that. You would be surprised at how quickly you drift off into conversations about all kinds of very interesting stuff, and from those very open-ended discussions, with casual discussions, usually inspiration comes. If you have that as a habit and the people feel comfort with each other, you usually get very quickly to those sorts of projects that they want to improve upon and so forth. And that's when they need the backing to say, well, that would be a pretty cool experiment. Try this thing out, and then they get some small time to actually go and etc. etc. Experiment with that thing a little bit. That's something that you can do to help your teams out. Have a great day.